You are a doctor, a quantum physicist to be exact. And I know I've used this example a little bit before, but just bear with me, please. You are a quantum physicist, and what ends up happening essentially is that you are going through a handful of top secret, compartmentalized clearances and programs within that of the Department of Defense, within the United States, within, Russia, the UK. It doesn't matter where in the world, within the respective country, wherever you're watching this from. Please, for me, and visualize yourself in that situation. You are a very highly respected doctor, physicist, you name it, and for years and years and years, you have heard through whispers and rumblings totally off the record from people within the alleged secret space program that there are ways to get in and to find out about all this secrecy and all that, and you love science so much that you really just want to get in. You don't care about the secrecy, you don't have a wife and kids, you don't have anything that could really affect you or have any collateral because you don't have much of a family. So you want to get involved in these secret programs, and you understand the ominous and the seriousness behind all of it. So one day you're called, and you've worked, by the way, you know about the existence of aliens. This is nothing new to you. You're called in to an office and you are asked to perform a handful of tests, okay? And what ends up happening is you are seated in a very dark room, right? And there are some figures in the very back distance of this room. You don't know how big or small the room is. You don't ask questions. You know that this is probably the test that will see if you're good enough to or worthy enough of Majestic 12 or Zodiac to get into the other side of these top secret programs. So you see what seems to be humanoid figures. Some look human, some look sort of like, tall, thin grays. And you've sort of, you've been to the deep underground military bases. You've seen some of these grays with the corner of your eye before, but you've never really, fully looked. Anyways, they start putting up pictures of what seem to be cat faces mixed with humans. And you say to yourself, okay, whatever, but I'm going to go along with it because, again, this is the nature of what I want to get involved in. Next thing you know, you start seeing a sort of mixture, a sort of Venn diagram consortium or conflation of a mixture of a human face with a cat face, and you start thinking to yourself, my gosh, is this a real species? And then all of a sudden, you start to feel a buzzing in your head, and you think to yourself, holy shit, my head may be monitored with psychotronic weapons. And you know this is nothing new to you because you've written, let's just say, for example, you've written proposals and studies about wormholes, psychotronics, esoteric light spectrum, extra dimensions for certain private contractors and others, you name it, right? Now, here's what's interesting. At the very end, you leave the room and you are told your karma is not good enough to be a part of the program. And the only reason why we're telling you that your karma is not good enough is because we've been surveilling you for the past 20 years that you've been working at the DoD, and we have every room bugged, and we've heard of the off-the-record conversations you've had. We know that you know this program exists, but sorry, sir or ma'am, your karma is not good enough. Why? Okay, and you ask them very simply, okay, look, totally off the record, let's call the bullshit here, right? You say, okay, this is what's happening. I know I didn't make it, but why? And the person responds to you and says, I just have my notes here, because you saw an image of a puma, which was actually a panther that you interpreted as a jaguar. Keep that in mind, folks. I know that might sound confusing, but let me repeat that. You saw an image of a puma in that room that I just gave the example of, which is actually a panther that you interpreted as a jaguar. And you say to yourself, why did I do that? And then you ask that person, why did I see it like that? And that person said, I can't say any more than this, and I'm already saying too much, but it's because your karma to this particular planet is too strong. Now, before I get into all of it, welcome, folks, for those that have, again, recently subscribed, welcome to the family. As we say, we do have a members section, patreon.com/GenerationZ, where we unload tons and tons of content compared to the public side, simply because I'd love to do it publicly, but we would get banned with the censorship these days. So again, patreon.com/GenerationZ, that is how we support the show. But let's jump right into it. Giza Intelligence using EATR wormholes, EATR wormholes, to hand over mass formation psychosis, in brackets ET implants. Now, I have some notes before we're going to look at some of the articles and references and documents, but let's jump into it. So please forgive me, I'll be reading very quickly here. Now, interestingly enough, I find it quite peculiar that certain people on this planet immediately get what's called karma, and I'm talking humans, not aliens, based on negative actions while others do not. I've come to realize that I think we as a society have overlooked the word karma, not so much in the esoteric sense necessarily, although one could consider that, but more in the sense that there is energetic loop attachment relative to what certain individuals like Dan Winter explain of centripetal forces and intention. Okay, now I know that might sound a little bit, I guess you could say, over the top or a little bit too much. You might be saying, Dave, what's going on here? Well, again, members will understand more immensely, but I had this written down for a few days now, even when I was sick as well, that I wanted to sort of just give my thoughts on. But let's jump right into it. I'll be putting my face in the corner here. So let's take a look first and foremost, okay? What is Giza intelligence? And I might be drinking some water a little more than usual because I haven't fully recovered from my cold, and thank you for the support for all those that have reached out to me. First and foremost, this is from projectavalon.net. Think of Project Avalon what you will. I understand that, folks. I get it. But we have to look for the data points irrespective of the sources in which they come from, relative to the unbiased neutrality of our research. Okay? So, Giza intelligence. Allegedly, before I start, Giza intelligence was a human-looking ET faction that the Nazis had already partnered with, and the alleged Orion Draco Greys, representing the Alpha Draconians, approached the Nazis in 1933 asking to make a deal, but the Nazis turned them away because they said, we already have a deal with another ET group. So let's take a look at this right over here. The Giza intelligence are human militarists of a fascist slant who have traditionally sided with the Dracos and the Greys. They collaborate within a large underground facility below Egypt, the base of a secret Kamogl II cult, which has connections to the Bavarian Thule Society, or Vril Society, and the Montauk Time-Space projects, which allegedly are part of the projects that the Allies took over from the Nazis relative to the end of the surface-level dissemination of the kinetic warfare of World War II. This cult is also referred to as the Giza Empire or Giza Intelligence, and they are working with secret societies on Earth in an effort to dissolve all national sovereignties into a global religio-eco-political order. We could say, very much the UN, the WHO, that whole angle there, NATO, any European Union, whatever conglomeration of that, of what seems to be an empirical, loose, I guess you could say, formation of alliances. There are also insectoid forces involved with the Aldebaran. Aldebaran is also allegedly another name of the Giza intelligence. Apparently, a neo-Nazi space force may have helped to colonize that system by sending time-space forces back into the distant past to inhabit the fourth-dimensional realm of one or more of its planets. These forces from the past are currently involved with the New World Order scenario, attempting to carry out their dictatorial agenda on Earth from their base within another time-space dimension of Aldebaran. All right? Now, what we'll see here is that the Greys made contact with the world government body for the first time in 1931. This was in Germany. The Greys, however, were turned away by the German government because it had already committed itself to involvement with the Giza intelligence. All right, now take a look at this over here. The Germans were in the 1930s building rockets and starting a space program because of their contacts with Giza intelligence. All right. Technology was developed and used to create weapons because the German governmental bodies involved were concerned that there was going to be an alien invasion. The Giza intelligence told them that the Greys were here, however, there was not an actual invasion per se in progress. Weapons such as sound devices, lasers, neutron bombs, particle beam weapons were created, although many of these were actualized later on in history. The Germans were given a lot of this tech by Giza intelligence. Their technologies also included free energy devices and anti-gravity tech. Interestingly enough, what we'll see here, if we scroll down a little bit more very quickly, is that we'll find, excuse me, here's one more. The observation leads to the conclusion, all right, that Al Gore is a top member of Giza intelligence. Now, before I go on with all this, this is pure speculation with respects to Mr. Gore, okay? I'm not saying this is fact, and I'm just reading it for you folks to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. This was reported, this was the reported occult backing of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi movement in Germany. Ethnically, the Mars connection of pyramid builders, Caucasian white race component of modern humanity via Atlantis in their original form fitting the Nazi stereotype and extremely racist, the people described by contactee Elizabeth Clarer, which would also, end quote, which would also be consistent with that of what we looked at relative to the Thule Society on previous live streams of Alternative 3, the Palladians, Mark of the Beast. We look, for example, at Hitler's, we look more on the member side of it on Patreon because we can't say this publicly about, the depravity of what Hitler claimed he went through during such depraved sexual rituals. Seems to be that of correspondence to that of, again, the Giza intelligence, which allegedly, depending on who you ask, but most say they're not really much of a factor anymore. They got very ego driven, and they were all, in the zone of feeling like they were gods relative to that of the planet Earth. Now let me just make sure. Okay. So now let's take a look at this right over here. What is EATR? By the way, we haven't even gone to the best parts of the episode, folks. So Gizmodo.com. This was published in 2015. October 29th, remember EATR, the military robot that was supposed to eat humans. All right, we completely understand the public's concern about futuristic robots feeding on the human population, but that is not our mission, Cyclone CEO Harry Schultz said in a press release in 2009. What could make the CEO of an alternative energy company issue such an insane statement? Well, Cyclone had a contract with DARPA for a little guy named EATR, the energetically autonomous tactical robot, and once news began to circulate about EATR, the public became concerned that this robot was powered by feasting on the flesh of dead people. All right, interestingly enough, it's true. Technically, it's true. They kind of went quiet on this. Now, take a look at this right here. The ArmageddonTimes.com, the military-made robot that can eat organisms for fuel. All right, take a look at this. Again, wearethemighty.com, the military robot that can eat organisms for fuel. This is not like it's anything, fringe conspiracy. I gave a couple of different independent sources, some more, again, politically leaning sources, in addition to that of gizmodo.com, what's considered quote-unquote mainstream media sources. Now, you remember the example I gave at the beginning about the different cat faces and what have you? Well, take a look at this right over here, about how you saw a combination of what seemed to be that of incorrect data obfuscation interpretation. Take a look at this right over here, folks. As we scroll down, this is according to noUFORs.com. All right, and these seem to be the different illustrations of alleged abduction consistencies relative to certain cases, like people, for example, like Mr. Jacques Vallée, who has written tremendous books like Trinity, the Best Kept Secret, as his most recent one, and also believing that there is some type of, or ideologically subscribing rather to there being some type of mechanical machine or mechanism that is giving the illusion, that is obfuscating the analysis of which scientific data could be interpreted relative to these abduction cases. Now, you see over here, right? Look at the different illustrations. There clearly are different forms of these beings. Bipedal, they all seem to be, again, going back to the concentric circles that I've given more so a description of in the members only episodes, about how there seems to be that within this dimension of a bipedal formation. Maybe they look different in other dimensions, but they must inhabit a bipedal dimension, a bipedal form, excuse me, in this particular dimension. So we see, by the way, the different kinds, right? Now, let's jump over here. Phantomsandmonsters.com, December 31st, 2021, just a couple days ago. 6-foot-tall cat humanoid terrorizes Boy Scouts at Northern Virginia camp. A group of Boy Scouts are in a camp in the Northern Virginia region. After the witness encounter, a cat humanoid follows them to the cabin and terrorizes the group during the night. But what if they were not actual cat humanoids? How do we know this? Well, let's take a look at the times.co.uk. Heavens above. NASA enlists priest to prepare for an alien discovery. Now, you might be saying, Dave, what does this have to do with the cat-face species? Well, we're seeing the instances of more and more what's called strange, fringe, high strangeness, creepypasta type events that turn out to be, again, we can't say true because we ourselves were not there, but seem to be consistent with that of which are other abductions occurring within a relative time frame within certain geographical vicinities, utilizing that of what's called a pattern of reinforcement within psychology, which then takes us to this article right over here. NASA enlists priest to prepare for an alien discovery. All right, you know what this tells me, at least, folks? Just my opinion, I could be wrong. This tells me, this article right here, that our species, humanity's been given a deadline to prepare for certain types of beings, which is why we see, for example, Boy Scouts, younger humans are seeing the more crazed type beings, or the more insane looking beings, insane relative to human perception of suppression. And the reason they do it with younger children, I wouldn't say is necessarily a bad thing relative to the benevolent factions acting here, but they're doing it, in my opinion, because they know that this younger generation is the one that is going to grow up and adapt and accustom themselves to more and more adaptive changes relative to their internal paradigms. You see what I'm saying? Because the paradigm of, for example, my grandmother, who's in her 80s, will not change. It could change, but very likely it won't. And you don't think these beings know this? And we can corroborate this even more by this right over here. LiveScience.com. Frozen tardigrade becomes first quantum entangled animal in history, researchers claim. Some experts are skeptical that the frozen moss piglet really entered a quantum state. First quantum entangled animal in history. Again, published 13 days ago. I don't even need to go to phys.org, futurism.com, techexplore.com. All these different outlets are these peer-reviewed journal outlets as well that are posting all of these different results of first time new science and studies suggest. don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's not a fluke in my humble opinion, folks, that again, there's been more suggesting and discovering science in quantum physics and science in the last freaking 3 weeks than there has been in the last 10 years. Something's coming and on its way, and it seems like there are different human factions that are trying to control the narrative, and it's not going to work. So, again, what I mean by this article is first quantum entangled animal in history. BS. First quantum entangled animal in history relative to our perception of the amnesia that our species has. All right, that is the attempt of higher levels of individuals within the DoD, in my opinion, and the Pentagon and Majestic 12 or Zodiac may be trying to suppress and contain a compartmentalized form of this disclosure. Now, take a look at this right over here. Digitaltrends.com. Somebody built a lickable TV. I repeat, a lickable TV. At the CES, Consumer Electronics Show 2022, someone's going to be showing off a TV that you can lick and taste. Now, why would that be so significant? Because, going back to the title of this episode, using EATR wormholes. Again, the DARPA bots that seemed to scare so many people, that was just a simple attempt to see how things would look on the surface, now are, again, coming for, in a different way, I'm not trying to fearmonger, coming for you, me, the more, I guess you could say, the younger generation of people, and coming for the data collection and information structure at an esoteric level of the elderly people to collect data relative to that of an information structure. And an information structure, according to Jacques Vallée, is also that of is the opposite side of a coin of what we call energy. Energy and information structures are both the same sides of a coin. So if we were to insert some type of quantum entanglement network that could surveil a species more inferior to us, meaning like way less stronger than us, how would we do it? First, you would start with something like, I don't know, the internet. And then you would create something where the internet could be entered, the metaverse. And then you would create something where things from the internet could be tasted. Like, I don't know, something like this. I know it sounds ridiculous, folks, but again, the science is there. Quantum physics warrants us to do this. Interestingly enough, we now have here the United States Psychotronic Association, which they hardly ever speak of. It's psychotronics.org. Again, mainstream media type website, if you want to call it that. But this is a full-on, I guess you could say, institution, if you want to call it, or organization or committee about psychotronics. So clearly, it does exist. It's not like this is anything new per se. Now, this is when we're going to get to the really, really good parts. NewYorkPost.com. Canada secretly tracked 33 million phones during COVID-19 lockdown. There's about 38 million in total in the population of Canada. Why didn't they track the other 5 million? They were probably, newborn kids, sick kids, old people in the nursing homes that they already had loads of data on that they didn't need. Interestingly enough, however, here's what I want to bring up relative to psychotronics and this type of cell phone tower frequential radio wave apparatuses. So we're going to open up here one step at a time. This gentleman right over here named CG from Twitter, I'd like to thank him so much for the connections that he's been making, because in my humble opinion, they were absolutely fantastic. So here's what we're going to do. Let's jump right into it. Now, the recent release of a FOIA document by blackvault.com appears to suggest that, quote, all presidential candidates have been implanted, and Hillary Rodham Clinton, HRC, may have been attacked before the campaign. What could this mean is anyone's guess. If anyone wants the specific files or screenshots, please email me, genzpodcast@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to provide it for you folks. So now let's take a look at the next screenshot here. Excuse me. The phrase, quote, implant hostage situation is also prevalent throughout the first few pages of this document. I am still working through much of the material, but this is chilling. Of course, the mailing list about this info is redacted, ironically enough. There are also hints of a post-MK Ultra brand of research. As someone who has a deep interest in this program, it makes one wonder about whether the program ever shut down and was instead rebranded. Again, CG, and I say this with pure respect, sir. First off, I appreciate your research and connections here. I would say we are the program. There was no need for a new name of MK Ultra. That's just my opinion, but take a look at this right over here. It is getting quite interesting. There is mention, all right, of a government mind radio implant program. And there is a mention of Barack Obama when he was a graduate student who was, quote, selected and profiled as a CEO psychopath with small group organizational skills, end quote. Again, going back to the Saturn Moon Matrix, Orion, Draco, Reptilian selective process of that of using time travel and an overarching agenda here, and we're going to bring this full circle shortly. Look at this quote, and he's citing right from the FOIA document. Obama, these are emails, by the way, between the NSA and the DOJ. You have certain individuals emailing the Department of Justice saying, I need you to take these implants out of my head, and NORAD can do it, and other instances can do it, and we'll get to that shortly. And I quote, Obama may have been unsuspectingly implanted and given implants to put up his nose for his use. All right, with him thinking I'm doing crimes solo on the way to president, not as an unsuspecting collaborator with James Clapper. And Barack sets up a mafia silencing tactic with a torture group with Don Levy to maintain the perceived control of the criminal implant use regarding those who know via the University of Oregon professors, end quote. This is not CG's personal opinion. These are quotes right from the frickin' FOIA document, folks. I don't know how much more direct we can get here. Now, again, not saying this is factual. Take this as you will, but take a look here. He then provides a screenshot of the previous quote. He also says there is mention of a physical helmet that people put on and something called, quote, neural net data interface, end quote, the computer brain interfacing headset. Seems right out of a science fiction film. Seemingly it does. Now take a look. There are 2 dead links meaning that they don't work anymore, to YouTube included in this document. They follow mention of Mind Radio, which is odd. All right, what could these YouTube links have been? These are the YouTube links that don't work anymore. Now take a look at this. The blackvault.com mentions Bilderberg, and here it is in the context of A-list Bilderberg Group. These are apparently, quote, cream of the crop public figures. There is also mention of people being implanted while in their sleep. I know this is getting crazy, folks, but look at this. This is getting somewhat depressing too, CJ tweets out. There are multiple mentions of rape too. My personal hope is that this information gets corroborated by some other material out there. This is getting to be a bit much. Rape, again. This is a FOIA request. This is way before anything. I know you think rape, we think, metaverse. People claim to have been molested in the metaverse. It's a real thing. I just recently reported on it about a week or 2 ago. If you follow me on social media, I've talked about it a lot. That's what I think of right away, about people being raped in this situation. Now take a look at this. The McDonough document mentioned here is very likely Dennis McDonough, who served as chief of staff to Obama. He was possibly connected to the, quote, compartmentalized implant program, end quote, according to this document. It appears that at least one of these messages was sent to, quote, Mr. Vice President, dated August 22nd, 2015, meaning Joe Biden. This piece also mentions, quote, rape cults, end quote, and, quote, randomly dialed into those implanted, end quote. I know it sounds creepy. I'm just presenting this, folks, for you to take this information for yourselves. So look at this. There are also numerous mentions of Levy in this document too, usually used alongside Obama's name. Levy, I believe, is Adar Levy, served under Obama and attended Harvard with him. It is a relevant detail. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. Now, let's take a look here. The individual who wrote these emails was clearly under distress. They revealed what they had been through, example, torture, and it is all too much to mention here. Check out the screenshots below. Now, again, he says at the bottom, correction, I was incorrect to suggest that this stuff was classified. All redactions appear to be for privacy concerns. It could be that this was sent unsolicited. This is a very real possibility or likelihood. Thanks to blackvault.com for clearing this up. My mistake. You know why it didn't need to be classified? Because it goes back to the example I gave at the beginning of this episode, folks. You are seeing an image of a puma, which is actually a panther that you interpreted as a jaguar. Meaning, not necessarily the cat animal faces, but if we apply it to this instance here, we all look and interpret the data differently. You see what I'm saying? So again, it comes down to how we see it. A lot of the secrets, if you want to call it that, are being put right in front of our faces and we don't even realize it. This would also, to be fair, substantiate, now think of him what you will, Alex Collier's statements since as early as, from what I understand, 1994, about the elites being implanted in their sleep, and some of them knowingly being implanted, and certain factions of human elites acting as the gatekeepers and joining the hive mind of certain Orion Draco Greys. Okay, now interestingly enough, we'll see here, we're not even done yet, folks. TheFly.com, the 1979 letter to the US government from the Plagiarians. This is allegedly the Pleiadians attempting to contact the US government to make some type of new rule relative to an upgraded form of that of the Giza intelligence. Allegedly, certain factions of the Pleiadians were under the influence of Orion Draco mindset, influence, and control for a very long time, which makes you think why, for example, humans are so suppressed with our technology when Orion Draco fascist type mentalities are being used with anti-gravity tech in a very dangerous formation. But anyways, I digress. These are some of the documents. If any of you folks would like to If any of you folks would like to look at them, please email me, genzpodcast@gmail.com. However, I want to take a look at something right over here. tandfonline.com. Thank you to Rena, a great friend of the show and member of our Patreon community, for pointing this out to me. Received April 29th, 2021, a highly miniaturized antenna with wider band for biomedical applications. All right, this proposed antenna utilizes polydimethylsilicane with dielectric constant 2.7 and loss tangent with thickness as substrate with thickness 0.2 millimeters as superstrate. A copper foil of 0.03 millimeters thickness is used for radiating elements, end quote. Now, interestingly enough, the proposed antenna is analyzed under various conditions, like under skin, muscle, stomach, small intestine, colon, and comparative analysis is presented with the help of reflection coefficient radiation patterns and specific absorption rates, end quote. Essentially saying that they can enter frequencies into the body without you even realizing, and using those frequencies to help increase even more energy that these eater bots, if you want to call it, would harness. Now, I'm not saying the eater bots are out to get us, the everyday people of you and I, but ultimately, in my humble opinion, what we have to do is understand that they are here and working in different esoteric ways. And how do we know this? How can we substantiate this? Well, what we are looking at over here, folks, is, I'll go right to the very top. This is the final part of all of this. All right, this incorporates that of numerology relative to the Patreon episode series we have with our great friend and member Ani. But we'll see here, Eric Davis. Okay, teleportation physics study. All right, this is the same Eric Davis from the Admiral Wilson Eric Davis leaks. He talks about, he wrote this all the way back in 2003. It was published in 2004. All right, again, having to do with this not necessarily needing to be classified, because again, it all depends on how we interpret the data and everything like that said within this explicit report. He then goes on to explain different forms of teleportation, the thin shell of mass energy. All right. He then goes on to continue to explain, I'm not going to pretend like I know what the math is here or anything like this, about how the teleportation would work in a visual sense. So we'll see over here. Let me just go very quickly. Quantum teleportation. See, Bob, Alice, again, a coincidence for Alice, I don't know, who knows. But the main point here is that he talks about quantum teleportation using different methods. And again, it just, we can read through all of it, but here's the interesting thing about all of this. Let's go to the very bottom. Take a look at the primary distribution of this report, not contributions. These are people that the report was sent out to. Every location here is in the United States except for two places, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and London, UK. Not that, but that's not even the main point. We'll see. Look at a lot of the people that this report was sent out to. High-level people, DARPA guys, Department of Energy guys, nuclear guys. All right, again, consulting services, 39 Kendall Avenue, Toronto, Canada, Ontario. I know where that is. NASA Johnson Space Center, Propulsion Research Center. All right, orbital technologies. These would be the people, I would dare to say, folks, and this is public. These would be the people that are in on the alien, I don't want to say agenda, but at least acknowledgement and existence. Now, this is the final thing I wanted to point out. Two addresses that seem to contribute to that of the Saturn Moon Matrix esoteric angle of applying numerology and esotericism to that of a relative mass consciousness physical dissemination. What do I mean by that? Look at this. Let's actually zoom in a little bit, folks. Take a look right here. We see the report was sent to Dr. Frank Mead, okay, 10 East Saturn Boulevard, Saturn Moon Matrix. You might be saying, Dave, that's nothing. Well, Edwards Air Force Base, California, allegedly where a lot of alien bodies are hidden and where a lot of things happen, a lot of, deep underground military base occurrences and experiments occur deep underground. Again, Dr. Jean-Luc Cambier, 10 East Saturn Boulevard, Edwards Air Force Base. All right, now, interestingly enough, AFRL/PR Technical Library, 6 Draco Drive. Draco, Saturn Moon Matrix, Orion Draco. You guys get it? Edwards Air Force Base, California. This is what I mean relative to the example I gave at the beginning about it being right in front of our faces. Now, if for those that have stuck around long enough, thank you so much for sticking around. You'll see over here. Let me just check, make sure we're still recording. Fantastic, perfect. We will see over here. This is the document of the this is page 7 of 15. This is the document of the Admiral Eric Davis and Wilson memo, the alleged transcripts or notes, if you want to call it that. Now, we're going to jump to page number 5. TW is Thomas Wilson. EWD is Eric Davis, the gentleman who also wrote this report right over here that we just looked at. So, let's take a look over here. Essentially, what's happening here is that Eric Davis in the parking lot of the EG&G building, which, go figure, of all places, EG&G, right? For those that follow the show, know how much extensively we've talked about that and how little we know about EG&G. Eric Davis is talking to Admiral Wilson, and this is what happened. Admiral Wilson is complaining that he couldn't get access to these special access alien programs. Take a look at this. Eric Davis goes, when? He's basically talking about how Lockheed slides, he's calling people around, wormholes, the whole thing, harvesting all this and whatnot, and he's still not getting an answer. Admiral Wilson says, I knew better later when I saw your papers and stats they provided. All right. What did you do with it? Had office do background checks. Gave deep, serious thought. All right. Now take a look at this. We spent, very furious, very angry about Miller. Violated personal and professional trust, especially among intelligence colleagues and Navy officers. All right. Miller told Greer their conversation. Again, Greer, actually Stephen Greer, he was a part of this. I can't, even though I'm not a fan, I cannot discredit him. I got to give him the respect where it's due. He helped for this to come out, allegedly, or arguably, right? Now take a look at this. Let's scroll down a little bit more. He was frustrated, all right, again, about all these different individuals that Eric Davis, for those that are watching on YouTube and not on audio, you'll see some of the transcript here that he's referring to about how I tried to reach out to these people and nothing happened. All right. Now, take a look at this. Thomas Wilson, Admiral Wilson says, she said by phone, Judy Daly, that security and other program budget records were being revamped and relocated to their own records groups. Security budgets were sometimes cumulative and not annual numbers. Easy to see how misunderstanding occurs when comparing two annual program budget figures. 6 to 7 times could be 2 to 5 years cumulative total. There could have been errors in way security budgets reported. Now, Eric Davis says, so what SAP special access compartment did you find in? Eric Davis goes, core secret, won't say. Eric Davis goes, code name. Wilson goes, again, won't say, core secret. Defense contractor, yes, the best of them. Intelligence too, in their corporate portfolio. Give a hint, sorry, no. I think it's Lockheed they're referring to. All right? Look at this. Wilson, they were agitated about my calling. Surprised about my calling. I told them I read their program record in the OUSDAT Special Program Records Group and wanted to know about their crashed UFO program, what their role in this was, what they had. Also asked if they heard of MJ-12 or some organization code relating to crashed recovered UFO craft. All right. And again, reaction to phone on that? Yes. Asked who I talked to before I called them, so I told them and they weren't happy with that answer. You mean about calling Perry and Paul? Wilson goes, no, I didn't tell them I talked to those guys. Whom else did you talk to? They were the other program managers I called. You didn't mention that before. I thought, and then Wilson goes, I thought I said something. Davis says, who were they? Wilson goes, 3 programs who said they weren't what or who I was looking for, and 4 programs that referred me back to the present threesome. Meaning, essentially, this stuff is so tightly kept that it's just giving one of, again, a deputy director, DIA assistant, joint chief of staff, Admiral Wilson, couldn't get in. Like, look at this. He demanded a formal briefing and they wouldn't give it to him. Again, they just simply wouldn't give it. So the question is, how is this being covered up so well? How, again, is this being so confined? And they threatened to take away some of his stars, Admiral Wilson. So again, this makes me think, folks, that the extraterrestrials, in my humble opinion, are running the show relative to what we discussed about the EATR wormholes, the mass formation of psychosis relative to what's going on in the world today with the beep boop and all of that. So I know it was a bit more of a longer episode than usual, but I really hope you folks see what I'm saying here relative to the overall collection and dissemination of information that seems to be quite prevalent relative to all of these new technologies. So with that being said, thank you so very much, folks, and we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.